जीवन एक पहेली जैसे कोई हथेली, खुशियाँ गम उम्मीद उमंग, रचे हैं सारे रंग, रचे हैं सारे रंग, रचे हैं सारे रंग, रचे हैं सारे रंग, यही है सच्ची बात जियो बिना के साथ।
Washington Square Park in the heart of the NYU campus. A place where students walk around, hang about, and get to know each other with a better understanding of their diverse cultures and faiths. Khalid Latif was also once a student, but today he has acquired a position of authority and leadership in the Muslim community here. In the heart of the NYU campus. A place where students walk around, hang about, and get to know each other with a better understanding of their diverse cultures and faiths. Khalid Latif was also once a student, but today he has acquired a position of authority and leadership in the Muslim community here. The first Muslim chaplain at NYU and the youngest chaplain in the history of the NYPD or the New York Police Department. Imam Khalid Latif, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me.
First question which comes to my mind, I think is going to come to everyone's minds is, you are so very young.
Yeah, that's true.
Is that an asset, or does it in some way deter you from what you do?
I think it can be advantageous and disadvantageous depending on how you look at it. I haven't had a problem in terms of being young. I think, you know, I started as a chaplain at NYU when I was 22, and then a couple years later when I was 24, I became the NYPD chaplain. But I think one of the important characteristics that somebody needs to have in a position like this is that you have to be able to communicate effectively with everyone,
True.
regardless of what their background is, including their age.
So it has been an advantage in some ways.
I think so. I mean, you know, for the work that I do, the demographic that I work with primarily is a college-age demographic, especially people who are coming from our kind of background. You know, people who are young Muslims. You know, their parents came from Pakistan in the 70s. My father is a doctor. He studied at King Edward's Medical College. He came here in the 70s with my mother. You know, they went from Arizona to Chicago to Brooklyn and then settled in New Jersey where I grew up. But, you know, there's a lot of conflict in terms of your identity. You know,
True.
Am I, you know, Pakistani? Am I Muslim? How does that fit into the broader American context? And so when you're trying to work out these issues and you want somebody to talk to, it kind of helps when somebody who is of your age and has the same experiences.
They can relate better to you and you to them.
There's a little better relation, yeah.
Was it a huge challenge being not just a Muslim, but being a Pakistani growing up in America?
Yeah, I mean, our close family, you know, friends circle were people who I think came from a similar professional background, you know, as my parents. But altogether, it was still something you could probably count on your fingers. And so in dealing with a population that hadn't really been engaged by, you know, people who were either Muslim or Pakistani, you know, there was always questions. And I think any person, you know, always has this innate desire to just fit in and belong in some way. And so I wasn't necessarily made to compromise on any of my, you know, primary convictions or beliefs, but I also didn't really know what those were necessarily, because I was being told one thing at home and I was being told another thing in school, and from a religious standpoint, it was just something that, you know, I was totally lost, you know. And so, you know, being in America, you know, are you feeling truly American? And then when it really hits you hard is, you know, when you go to Pakistan, you don't necessarily feel really Pakistani either, you know.
We're different over there too.
Yeah, I remember when I was 12, I actually went to Pakistan. I was visiting my nani, my grandmother, and my aunt in Islamabad. And you know, we were walking. My brother and I had gone by ourselves, and we're walking through the streets. And you know, I'm wearing a pair of jeans, and I have a T-shirt on, and I'm wearing a baseball hat backwards. And you know, this very cute little kid. You know, we're walking through a gaon type area, and this young young boy comes out, he's wearing a green shalwar kameez, he has his head shaved, you know, I can still see him, and he looks at me and he looks at me up and down, and you know, then he screams to all of his friends, you know, "Oi, Michael Jackson aage," right? And you know, you had this group of, you know, young Pakistani boys chasing me up and down the street.
Was it difficult being a Pakistani when you're in America and being an American when you're in Pakistan?
I think it really helped to shape a lot of my viewpoints on a variety of things, you know, in the present time. So at that point, you know, it was hard fitting in. But I think one of the things that, you know, I've learned in the work that I'm doing now is we always have an assumption as an inferiority complex, you know, where we'll assume the other won't understand us. You know, they won't know what we're about.
And we won't make the effort
to make them understand. You know, we won't make the effort, you know, so it just creates this obstacle. And where I'm at right now in terms of growing up is, you know, just reflecting on a lot of wasted opportunity.
Your choice of career is actually quite unusual, and especially for, I think, a Pakistani who comes from a background of professionals, lawyers and doctors, etc. How comfortable were your parents or your family with your choice of career?
I think if you ask my parents now, you know, they wouldn't have wanted it to go any other way.
Now, I'm talking about then.
But, you know, back then, you know, it wasn't something that was really easily accepted, you know, by my family. You know, because you have questions of job security, you know, salary, etc. You know, lack of conventionality of the entire profession. Right. You know, my title is a chaplain, and you know, you try to explain to a Pakistani what a chaplain is. You know, the initial questions I met from most uncles were, you know, have you converted to Christianity?
It's not a word that people associate with any kind of Islamic scholar, for example.
That's more so about, you know, get this kind of degree, you know, get a JD, get an MBA, you know, get an MD, you know, you'll have a kind of secure lifestyle. It'll allow for you to move a little bit more freely. But, you know, for me, you know, I tried to actually go to law school for a year, and on a theoretical level, it was very engaging, you know, but just the idea of being a lawyer wasn't something that sat very well with me. And so, you know, I transitioned out to a seminary program. Everybody, you know, is completely comfortable with it now.
Your parents came in the 70s, and so do so many other families. But settling over here, they did set up some sort of a system of religious education for their children, which was the Sunday school. Yeah. But then again, even with the same faith, Muslims from different parts of the world have different cultures. And that doesn't always interact that comfortably either.
Yeah, definitely.
So do you think those Sunday schools did have some sort of a role in your development or the development of other young Muslims in this country? Or was there a lot of cultural conflict between, let's say, Arabs and Indians and Pakistanis?
Yeah, one day a week I'm sitting in a basement of somebody's house where somebody, you know, who doesn't know the answer to everything and seemingly just makes up answers, you know, as opposed to saying, I don't know, is teaching me about my religion.
Being in the position you're in, do you think there is a way out to that?